I've assessed everything, all the information has been collected and analysed, and I'm finally ready to make my final prediction for Anthony Joshua versus Daniel Dubois. Hello everyone, welcome back to A Guy Called Henry. This is my final prediction video for Joshua versus Dubois. As I mentioned in my little preview there, guys, I have thought about everything now for this fight, and it's been covered on this channel. If you want to go back and check out anything I'm going to talk about here in more detail, you can. So we did the tactical analysis, we did the game film analysis. That's available. I'll put links in the description for all the following videos. But if you want to see a really detailed breakdown of this fight, then head over to that video. I go into a lot of detail about each fighter's tendencies and how I see each fighter exploiting the other. We've covered the psychological and mental aspects of this fight, where we've reacted to their face-off, their cross-table conversation, where it resulted in Joshua threatening to hit Dubois over the head with a chair. And we also reacted to the off-the-cuff interviews, where we saw them in a less combative environment, where they were just by themselves and, you know, just able to express themselves a bit more freely. Ade did a great job in those interviews of bringing the fighters out of their shells. And I think we saw in those interviews the kind of mental state both fighters are at approaching this fight. And finally, we've even considered the impact that the two fighters' camps might have on this fight, how they've influenced each fighter, Ben Davison and Don Charles. There's been all sorts of crazy stuff about Don Charles this week. I've seen all sorts of rumors about voodoo, black magic, witchcraft stuff with Dubois' dad. I've seen the fact that Don Charles might not even be in the corner. I don't think that's true. I think he will be there, but you guys can go and check all that stuff out if you want. I'm not going to get into all of that. I'm going to deal with what I can deem to be factual or at least observable evidence. I've got no idea about all that stuff. So I've come to this video today and it's time to make my final prediction for this fight. And stick around to the end, guys, because I'm going to try and be as specific as I can with what I think will happen. I'm going to try and give you two scenarios of how I see each fighter winning, and I'm going to give you the one that I think is most likely. Before I get into this video, guys, don't forget to like it, subscribe to my channel, A Guy Called Henry, and get your thoughts in the comment section below. Who do you think is going to win this fight? How do you think they're going to do it? So I thought I'd try something a bit different for this prediction video, guys, because as much as I think, you know, I've done as much assessing as I possibly can, and it is time for me to try and give this accurate prediction. I want to create a video that's fun for you to watch, something enjoyable, something for us to get stuck into. And whilst there's so many intangibles going into a fight like this, especially a heavyweight fight, I always caveat heavyweight predictions with the line, anything can happen. Anything can happen in a heavyweight fight. So all this analysis can be thrown out the window by one accurate punch. One huge moment, anything can happen. Honestly, that's what makes heavyweight boxing so exciting. It's almost a different sport. It's almost like amateur to pro and then pro to heavyweight. You know, such is the difference in this division. But what I'm going to do, guys, is, as I say, there's so many intangibles. I want to try and make things a little bit more tangible. And I know a lot of you love to try and break things down to numbers where possible. So what I've done for today's video is I've tried to create fighter cards for each fighter and give them statistics. So we've got speed, power, chin, footwork, defense, and ring IQ. I'd love to have added a couple more in there, but that was as many categories as I was allowed with these cards. They're based on the FIFA Ultimate Team cards. I'm going to work through each of these categories and try to give each fighter a score. I'd love it if you tried to get your scores in the comments below. How would you grade these fighters? We're doing it out of 100. So the first category we're going to go for is we're going to go for speed. The first category we're going to go for is speed. I'm going to go with Joshua first. So Joshua, I've given him 85 speed. I think that AJ is a pretty fast heavyweight, and I think his speed is a bit underrated and a bit underestimated. I would say that there's different kinds of speed in boxing. There's foot speed, there's hand speed, there's speed of reaction, and I think overall AJ is a reasonably fast heavyweight, a pretty fast heavyweight. Especially, I think the part of his speed that's underestimated is the time it takes to get from point A to B with his punches, and especially when he's throwing in combinations, his hand speed is really very decent. To compare that to Dubois, I've given Dubois 80 speed out of 100. I think that Dubois has comparable speed to AJ, but I do think in most areas of speed, I think Dubois is a little bit slower. I think that his speed, his punches, they're less twitchy, they're less fast twitch than Joshua's are. I think they're more thudding punches, they're more clubbing. And I think that Joshua's hand speed is a little better than Dubois'. I think foot speed-wise is where they're a little bit closer, but I would still give the edge to Anthony Joshua in terms of how quickly he can move in and out of range, although I think it's very similar in that aspect. And in terms of reaction speed, I think Joshua is the marginally faster fighter. We then move on to power. I've given Joshua 91 power out of 100, and spoiler alert, I think this is Joshua's #1 asset and attribute. And with Wilder kind of falling away out of the picture in the heavyweight division. I think Joshua probably now, along with Zhang, is probably the hardest one-punch heavyweight in the division. I know Wilder said he's going to continue, and I'm sure if you put them both against one of those punch machines and Wilder just threw, I think that, probably one-shot power Wilder almost certainly is still above Joshua. But I think Joshua 91 power is a very fair assessment if Wilder is around, let's say, 96, 97, 98, maybe even 99 power, because there's no such thing as a 100 power for anything, I don't believe, because there's always going to be someone or something that comes along that increases that limit. I'm going to give Joshua 91 power. I think his punch power is very, very good when he is allowed to punch through the target and land that shot. A very, very destructive puncher. For power, I've given Dubois 88. I think Dubois also punches extremely hard. I think certain punches he possesses are harder than Joshua's. I think his jab is harder. I explained in my breakdown video that because he stands so square, Dubois, his jab is a little further away from the target, which means he gets more rotation in it, which is one of the reasons that I think his jab is such a hard punch for him. But it's also one of the reasons that his right hand is possibly not as hard as it could be, because that is also closer to the target. So anytime you have a squarer body, that's kind of the outcome of the impact it has on those shots. I think in terms of bent arm shots as well, similar power. I think Joshua's uppercuts and hooks are really, really powerful and really, really great shots. I think Dubois, I think they have fairly similar in that area. It's the right hand where I give Joshua the edge. I think Joshua's right hand is quite a bit more powerful than Dubois'. Not masses. I think quite a bit might mischaracterize it. I think he's just a slightly harder puncher, Joshua. I think he's got more concussive one-shot power than Dubois does, although it is very close. And because Joshua is the slightly heavier man, that also helps. The next category is chin. I've given Joshua 82 for chin, and that might surprise some people. Some people think Joshua's got a really, really bad chin, and I don't agree with that. I think Joshua's got a very decent chin for the heavyweight division. I've seen him down a couple of times in his career, but I've also seen him eat clean shots right to the jaw and take them. And I think aside from the Klitschko fight, there was that one massive backhand that Klitschko landed that put Joshua down. And I remember Joshua also ate an enormous uppercut in that same, I think it was the same round or the round after or before. Joshua ate some giant shots from Klitschko in that fight, got up and then obviously managed to, recover and go on to win that fight. And also, of course, Andrew Ruiz when he was hit around the temple. I think, Joshua's not been down that many times and he has eaten some clean shots. So I've given him not an amazing chin, but a very respectable, I think it's a world level chin. I just don't think it's like elite world level in terms of his punch resistance. I've given Dubois, and this is the first area where I've got Dubois edging Joshua. I've given Dubois 86 for his chin. Ate so many shots in that Hrgovic fight, and I've never actually seen him knocked down in a way where it was like not Dubois taking a knee. He's been down before, he's been stopped, but it's always been him mentally giving up rather than him being hit with one like concussive punch that he just can't recover from. So I think Dubois' chin is better than Joshua's. How good it actually is, we're going to find out, because he's about to be in with the biggest punching heavyweight he's going to have been in with in his career. So all of these ratings, guys, they're subject to change. This is just based on what I've seen so far. And, I might get this wrong, but this is just what I'm seeing. It's very, very hard to actually nail down exact numbers for things because there's so many different scenarios in a ring where power varies, where your chin might vary based on where you're hit. Your speed, depending on what part of boxing we're talking about, is different, but trying to do the best I can to crunch these down into some numbers. I've got Joshua for footwork is next, and I've got Joshua 84 rated for his footwork. I think Joshua's got pretty good feet, actually. It's very rare that you see him massively off balance. His foot speed's really, really good. The main component of his footwork that I'm impressed with is his legs. I think he's really good at keeping himself out of range and moving around the target. He did a whole fight that way against Andrew Ruiz in the second fight. And I think that's something we're seeing more and more with him now, where he uses his legs to defend. So I think his legs are one of his biggest attributes, Joshua. And I've actually given Dubois the same grade. I've given him an 84 as well. I think that maybe not as reactionary with his legs, Dubois, as Joshua is. I think he doesn't react quickly enough at times. But having said that, I think he's probably a little bit better when he starts bouncing and starts trying to get into a rhythm. And it's something that he doesn't do that consistently through a fight. And fair enough, he's a big, heavy guy. It's going to consume a lot of energy. But I think in terms of overall how they're both able to use their feet in different scenarios, I think they have very similar ability levels with their feet. We move into defense. I've given Joshua an 83 for his defense. I think that Joshua's got a very classic defense, very standard. He uses a high guard, not too much head movement, the occasional bit of head movement, getting his head off the center line. Did that a little bit against Ngannou. Definitely started using pull counters a little bit more and dipping. And, I think that that's not so much defense, that's more making offensive opportunities. But just in terms of pure defense, not getting hit with too many clean punches, being defensively responsible, the way he uses his legs, the way he uses a high guard. I think Joshua has got a pretty good defense. And he outscores Dubois here. Also, I've given Dubois 76 for his defense, which people might think is a little bit harsh, but I actually think the weakest part of Dubois' game is his defense. I think his guard is virtually non-existent when you're a big man and you're able to hit him with jabs, 1-2s. You saw against Hrgovic, he got hit clean a lot of times. Against Jarrell Miller as well, he got hit with some clean punches. You saw how he really struggled to defend the jab against Joe Joyce, and honestly, that was a while ago, but I don't really think his defense has improved that much. So his chin's good, but his defense isn't so good. So it's lucky that he's got a good chin. Look, maybe in this fight we'll see a marked improvement, but to be honest with you, that is how I view his chin. Sorry, that's how I view his defense. I think he's a 76. I think that's probably his weakest attribute. And finally, we move into IQ. For IQ, I've given Joshua an 84. I think Joshua's got pretty good ring IQ, and I wanted to give him more based on his last two performances, but looking at his body of work, I'd say that he's relied a lot more on his athleticism and power and just what he has as a boxer in terms of his raw physical attributes. That's been what's got him to the level he got to. Now he's become a bit more cerebral. He's added more to his game. He's moved into this counterpunching style. The reason I can't go higher than 84 is just because of the opponents he's been in with, and I'm really excited to see what he can do in this fight. I think Dubois is going to bring it out of him. We're going to get a proper test of his ring IQ here. We're going to really find out just how smart he is as a fighter now under Ben Davison. And for IQ, I've given Dubois, again, slightly less than Joshua. I've given him an 80. I think that Dubois does do some smart things in the ring. I think he's picked up some good things from the trainers he's had. I think he goes in there and he does try and box to a game plan. But I also feel like, I don't know, it's a difficult one. I feel like sometimes he's not adaptable enough. And that could also be leveled at Joshua. But I also feel like Joshua is able to carry out more complex instructions as long as he understands what he needs to do. Whereas with Dubois, his performances have been quite physical and quite raw. And when you look at their best wins, Dubois doesn't have wins on the same level as Joshua across their resumes. I give the point that, his last two opponents have probably been slightly better than Joshua's last two opponents. Although I think Wallin and Big Baby Miller would be quite a competitive fight. But in terms of Hrgovic and Ngannou, yes, I think Hrgovic is the better fighter. But across their careers, I think Joshua has by far the better resume, by far the better wins. And so overall, I have to say that Joshua has a higher IQ. Plus, the way I've seen him box in those last two fights, I think the potential is there for that score to go up quite a bit after this fight. And so that gives us our fighter cards, guys. And I've given Joshua an overall, I've actually just averaged the scores out. Joshua has an 85 overall, and Dubois has an 82 overall. And so now that we've quantified it, guys, you can kind of see why people are saying, everyone's kind of picking Joshua to win, even though it's also being called a close fight at the same time. It's this weird paradox where it can be close, but also there's a guy who's clearly better. And by trying to break it down and quantify it with those scores, I think it makes the point quite clear and obvious. AJ is a few grades above Dubois, but it doesn't mean Dubois can't win. It doesn't mean he can't affect him. If Dubois' numbers came out and he was like a 70 overall, then you just say he's got no chance. But it's like Joshua's clearly better and superior in most categories, but Dubois is close enough that if Joshua makes a mistake or if Dubois gets it particularly right, then he can definitely win this fight. With that said, I feel like I've covered every single element and component of this fight now. So let me try and make a final prediction here for you. So I think, starting with the tactics, I think Joshua is going to have the better tactical game plan on the night. That's based on the way I see the two camps. I think that AJ has got a lot more wisdom and experience in his camp. You'd say experience would be on Dubois' side based on the age and profile of his training team. But Ben Davison, as I mentioned in my trainer videos, he's been at world level countless times now. He understands what is required and what it takes to get a win at elite world level. Whereas I feel like Don Charles has never had a world champion. He's really desperate for one, but he's never quite done it. And typically, top elite level fighters don't choose to go with him. So I think that's quite telling. I think in terms of perceivable flaws and weaknesses in their game, I think Dubois has many more than Joshua. Although Joshua does have some crucial and key weaknesses. For Dubois, it's a susceptibility to the right hand. There was various different ways Hrgovic was able to land that right hand. Whether it was just being in range, feinting, firing a 1-2, seeing how Dubois reacts, which he doesn't typically. He sort of has this tendency, which I've shown in my videos, where he sticks his jab arm out. Pretty ineffective. It kind of takes the sting off their right hand a bit, but easy to throw over the top of that. Pull counters, he did that a couple of times in the fight. And guard manipulation, where, he stuck his jab out, he pulled the guard down and fired the right hand over the top. I think that Dubois also, he goes in with his head a lot. He's very, very square. I think these are all things that play into the way AJ likes to box and counterpunch. With Anthony Joshua, the big weakness that I think I probably missed in my breakdown video was, that susceptibility to receiving left hooks and the fact that, we've seen when he gets hit around that temple area, it does kind of scramble him. And Dubois, he has a good left hook, as articulated by Shane McGuigan in this fight week. McGuigan came out and said, as Dubois' former trainer, he came out and said, everyone thinks it's the jab that's the best shot, but often he overcommits with it. I completely agree with that. And he says it's actually the left hook that's his best shot. It's very sneaky. It's got a lot of power on it. He throws it very naturally as part of combinations. So, potentially that's actually a strength of Dubois and a weaknesses of Joshua's that matches up well. But what I would say in that analysis is that Joshua isn't holding his feet as much as he used to in the pocket. He kind of does his work, gets out, single shots, jabs, makes you think about shots to the body, gets you worrying about different things, and then he sets you up for big counter punches. So I think that's all relevant. I think that Joshua has the less perceivable weaknesses at this point in his career, but we do know they're there, and we've seen them in the past. So, when he does get hit, how will he react? That's what I kind of want to see, because he hasn't been really cracked in any of his last few fights. So if and when Dubois lands, which I think he will, we'll see how Joshua reacts. The other component here is mental preparation. Mentally, how ready are these guys? I think they both seem really ready. I think they both have healthy and good mindsets going into this one. I think, all the pressure is water off a duck's back for Dubois, because he just kind of disengages. You saw it in the press conference yesterday. He didn't hear what was going on. He kind of, AJ asked him something and he just went, what? He just he isn't there. And in a way it kind of is favorable for him. Although I think he needs to be a thinking fighter in this fight. As long as he can do it in the ring, it really doesn't matter how he behaves outside of it. And AJ seems like he's in the best place mentally. He's been for a very, very long time. He seems really confident and comfortable. And I think all the right noises are coming out of his camp in this fight week. So the two ways I see this fight going in terms of how each fighter can win, I think for Daniel Dubois, the key is to not allow Joshua space to counterpunch. I think he's got to make it a very close encounter, a very close quarters fight. I think that ideally for Dubois, he'll keep his front foot close as much as possible, and he'll use lots of feints to create indecision in Joshua. Very similar to the Madrimov-Crawford performance. Madrimov typically was a lunging fighter. He was attacking from distance, and Crawford, I think, was very comfortable with taking that fight at 154 pounds because he could see, I can read what this guy's going to do. Much like the Spence fight, I can read him. I'll get used to what he does, and I'll time him, I'll counter him, and I'll take him out. I think that Dubois needs to make it a similar performance where he keeps his front foot very close. AJ's going to want to keep space. He's going to want to stay away from Dubois, not let it become a close quarters fight. He's also the bigger and longer man, Joshua. So I think that for Dubois, it's really important he keeps his front foot close, uses educated pressure, has a really, really good disciplined, tight, high guard, so that when Joshua does throw his jabs and, when he's not countering, when he's just leading off, Dubois is able to take those shots. And if Dubois can do that, if he can stay in a position where Joshua's feeling the pressure constantly, if Dubois can set a high pace, because I think he has the better gas tank and stamina, something I didn't actually get on my fighter card, then I think that can eventually break Joshua down, and Dubois can start to land his work just like he did on Hrgovic. But remaining defensively responsible in that game plan is the key there. If Dubois can do that, I think he can win this fight. I also think he's got to win the contest of the lead hands if he's going to win this fight. But that is the scenario and the game plan that I could see working for Dubois. I think he's got to keep it quite simple, and I think he's got to be the pressure fighter in this fight, which he likes to do anyway. He likes to be the man that leads off. If he can do that, I can see him beating up and potentially stopping Joshua, although I could also see him winning on points fighting this way. The second scenario that I see is AJ managing to keep the space, keep the distance, land clean shots on Dubois to make him more apprehensive about coming in, land a couple of right hands, be very, very sharp with the jab, go to the body. Dubois flares his elbows. So there's always an available shot downstairs, typically with him. I think the jabs to the body that Joshua used against Ngannou worked very well. He's just got to watch that counter left hook that Ngannou actually threw a few times that, Joshua was able to catch on his gloves. Just basically, he really does not want to get involved in the pocket because that's where Dubois, I think, will thrive. But I think for Joshua, the key is straight shots. He wants to keep it straight. I think uppercuts could work very well for Joshua as well because Dubois likes to dip his head down. And I think in this fight scenario that I'm painting for you, I think that the key here for Joshua is keeping the gap, keeping the space, and working out Dubois' tendencies, getting him worried about different shots that are coming, and make him apprehensive to just rush into Joshua's space by landing some good punches on him, and timing him with something. Timing him, drawing him onto a big shot, which I definitely can see happening. Dubois, as I said before, defense super leaky. He's there to be hit. What's the most likely of these two outcomes for me? I think it's AJ. I think it's AJ all day. I've just showed you that I think he's the better fighter in most categories. I think his team is better. I think he's got more experience on world level, and I just think he's going to be better prepared for this fight. But I do think there's a strong case in which Daniel Dubois can have an impact in this fight. To make my prediction a bit more specific, I think Joshua is going to win by stoppage. I don't think it's going to be in the first 6 rounds because I think he's going to be very defensively responsible. I think Dubois will also be apprehensive because of Joshua's power. And even if Joshua does get Dubois going, we know Dubois has got a good chin now. And I don't know if the quit is in him anymore, Dubois. It might be. Maybe when he gets hit hard, he'll want to take a knee and stay on his knee. But I don't think he will. I think he's going to stay in there for this one. So I think that Joshua is probably going to have some good success in the first few rounds. It might be quite even, just while Joshua is figuring out, what does this guy do? Can I start making him think I'm going to do one thing, then do something else, lure him into traps, and bait him into throwing certain shots, and then countering effectively? So I think that if I'm going to be really specific with this, I think that the fight will finish between rounds 7 and 9. I think Joshua might even hurt him earlier than that, but like we saw against Ngannou, I don't think he's going to rush in to finish him. You know, Joshua landed that first knockdown, he took his time. Second knockdown, he realized he was really hurt, then he went and finished him. So it will depend how hurt Dubois is, but I think Dubois just having the better boxing fundamentals than someone like Ngannou, I think it will take a little bit longer. So I'm going to go for my prediction, KO Joshua around 7 to 9. But anything could happen in this one, and it could well be over in the first few rounds. It just depends how aggressive Dubois comes out. That's my opinion. So there you go, guys. That's my prediction. Let me know if you enjoyed this video. Please hit the subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Please like the video. Please get your fighter ratings, scores in the comments section. Let me know how you think this fight is going to go. If you want to book this fight with DAZN, guys, use my link in the description, and I'll get a little cut of the revenue. As I say, if you were planning on buying the fight anyway, it just means that you help support my channel. It doesn't cost anything extra, and I'd really, really appreciate it if you want to do that. But I can't wait for this fight, guys. I'm going to try and live stream it, although I'm going to have to get up quite early in the morning, so no guarantees, but I'm going to try. If not, at the very least, 6 Things We Learn will be out straight after the fight. And I'm really looking forward to this one, guys, and I hope you are too. And as I always say, on to the next one.